You are not weak because you're in pain. You only become weak when you try to kill the pain at all costs. No one teaches us how to understand pain. We're only taught how to endure it or escape from it. From a young age, we learned how to stay silent when we're sad, how to smile when we're hurt, how to appear strong, just so no one sees us falling apart inside. And slowly, we forget what's real. We don't know if we're healing from the pain or just letting it rot in the dark, unattended. Some people always seem cheerful, always busy, always sociable, but in truth, they're running from the quiet cry of a wound that was never seen for what it truly is. Have you ever done that? Told yourself, "I'm fine," then buried yourself in work, in shallow relationships, in hollow encouragements, just so you wouldn't have to sit alone with that pain. We're not really afraid of pain. We're afraid of being alone with it. Some wounds seem like they've healed, but then a word, a memory, a familiar scent can make your chest tighten like it just happened yesterday. In those moments, you don't even know who you're angry at. You don't even know what exactly hurts. You just feel empty, confused, and lost because you silenced the emotion too soon. You never let the pain finish telling its story. And here's the cruel part. This world doesn't have time for those who are hurting. You'll be loved if you're strong enough to keep moving. But if you fall, if you stop to breathe, to feel, you'll be left behind. You may even be labeled as weak, negative, or lacking resilience. So we learn to stay silent. We try to heal ourselves by cutting off our feelings. We think that's maturity, but in truth, that's the moment we begin to become a shadow of who we really are. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." If you don't understand the pain inside you, it will run your life from behind the curtain of your unconscious. You'll repeat the same kind of wrong love. You'll keep pleasing others but feel invisible. You'll keep searching for something but have no idea what it is. And you'll think it's fate, but it's not. It's unresolved pain. Don't kill the pain. Don't silence it with positive vibes, with happy thoughts, or with sweet but empty self-affirmations. Pause and let the pain speak. Because sometimes pain doesn't come to break you. It comes to bring you back. The past you denied, the self you hid, the inner child who was once forced to stay silent, all of them, they are knocking through what you call pain. Will you keep killing it, like you've always done? Or will you choose to sit with it, listen, and begin to understand? No, this is not a video about healing. It's not a lesson to help you conquer pain with logic. This is a video for those who are tired of running, for those who've gotten lost in all the ways they tried to move on and just ended up feeling more hollow. If you've lived too long in "I'm fine" mode, if you've killed your pain and still feel that something is off, then maybe it's time to stop, not to suffer more, but to finally understand what inside you is waiting to be seen. And maybe you'll realize something no one ever told you. Pain is not the enemy. It is a signal. And if you don't stop to listen, it will turn into a shadow that runs your life from the inside. We live in a paradoxical time, a world where everyone talks about self-love, but very few know how to sit quietly with their own pain. We've learned to heal through denial. Whenever a negative emotion shows up, we instantly try to replace it with a positive thought. When pain rises, we silence it with the mantra, "Everything will be okay." But the question is, okay for who? Okay, as in truly at peace? Or have you just tamed the pain so much that you can no longer hear its voice? Have you ever asked, what exactly inside me is hurting? Why am I reacting so strongly to this? Where is this anger really coming from? Or are you more used to saying things like, "Just let it go. It's nothing. I'm fine. Smile. It's over now. There's nothing to be sad about. Others have it worse." You think you're being mature, being positive. But the truth is, you've simply confused understanding with avoidance. That's the most dangerous culture of our time. We are not allowed to hurt. Every deep feeling gets labeled as negative. Every moment of vulnerability is seen as a lack of strength. Every real pain must be hidden, just so we can present a socially acceptable version of ourselves. But do you realize, the moment you deny your pain is the moment you begin to deny a part of yourself. The more you suppress it, the more it changes form. Unprocessed sadness becomes anger. Fear of abandonment turns into control. Childhood wounds turn into a shadow that causes you to repeat the same damage. This time, to others. You don't notice it, because you think, "I'm not even sad." But in truth, you've been disconnected from your own inner world for a long time. You live in a body that reacts, but your mind has long been separated from its true emotions. You try to love, to connect, to stay strong, but you have no idea why it's so exhausting. The more you try to live the right way, the further you feel from yourself. The more you help others, the more drained you feel. The more success you gain, the emptier it feels inside. Because what you don't realize is, behind every effort to become a better version of yourself, lies a pain that has never been touched. And the brutal truth is, the world doesn't stop to ask where you hurt. It only looks at what you manage to show on the outside. So you keep pushing, smiling on cue, staying perfectly positive, succeeding on schedule. But when night comes, you still feel the hollow in your chest. How many relationships have you walked through, yet no one ever truly reached you? How many healing methods have you tried, yet still feel like you haven't even begun? How many times have you said, "I'm okay," while deep down, something still felt wrong? Do you know why? Because you're holding on to something you're too afraid to look at. You're holding back a part of yourself because you fear that if it ever came out, you wouldn't be able to control it. You're afraid of breaking, afraid of being seen as weak, afraid you'll no longer be the strong version that people expect of you. And most of all, you're afraid no one would stay if they ever saw the part of you that's still hurting. So you hide it. You hid it deep. But what you're hiding is silently steering your entire life. And you call it a choice? You call it maturity. You call it, "I'm fine." Carl Jung said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." You can't heal by imagining light. You can only heal by facing the darkness within. So be honest. Stop running. Pause. And ask yourself, what am I holding on to that keeps making me pretend to be strong? Because if you don't ask now, you'll carry that same pain from one relationship to the next. From youth into old age. From fake smiles into hollow stares. You don't need someone to heal you. You just need to stop hiding from yourself. Pain is not something to escape. It's a doorway, leading back to the part of you that was once left behind. Do you want to live authentically, or just live stably? Do you want to be truly seen, or just accepted? Do you want to understand yourself, or just race past the pain to a place called peace? Be honest, because pain doesn't leave until you face it. And if you're brave enough to pause today, you'll see something clearly. You are not weak. You've just been too strong in the way you've kept hiding yourself. You smile, but only so. No one asks, "How are you really doing?" You say you're fine, but even you no longer believe that. No one ever taught you how to live with pain, so you chose the easiest way. You buried it. You buried it under your work. You covered it with fast, shallow relationships. You layered it with I'm fine. I'm strong. I'm independent. You tell yourself, I'm okay. I go to work, meet friends, smile like everyone else. But deep down, you know something inside you has disconnected. You hear your own laughter, but feel out of place. You show up at parties, but wish they'd end quickly. You get praised, but feel hollow. You try to love, but your heart no longer opens like it used to. You do all the right things, yet nothing feels real, because you've shut the door to the deepest part of you, your emotions. Not because you're numb, but because you once felt too deeply. You once loved someone with everything, once trusted with all your heart, once believed something could be forever, and then everything collapsed. Since then, you've learned to not feel too much. You've gotten good at hiding, so good that even you don't know you're sad, until the tears fall for no reason. Have you ever felt like that? Sitting on a bus, surrounded by people, yet feeling like the whole world is drifting away. No one hurt you, no one abandoned you, but you still feel like a shadow, lost in the middle of life. That's when you're no longer hurting in one place. You're hurting everywhere. You're hurting in ways that don't even have names. You don't speak about it because you're afraid no one would understand. You stay silent because you're too used to carrying it alone. You look in the mirror and see someone who's alive, but no longer shining, no longer hopeful, no longer with a place that feels safe enough to be sad. How many mornings have you woken up feeling heavy? How many nights have you laid down, wishing you wouldn't have to begin again tomorrow? You're not a pessimist. You've just been in pain for too long, without anyone noticing. You once tried to change yourself to make someone stay. You stayed silent to avoid being a burden. You kept pretending to be strong because you were afraid of disappointing others. And you kept going like that, year after year, until one day you forgot, who am I living for? What am I even trying so hard for? Pain doesn't disappear. It just changes form. It becomes a mask. It hides in every emotional reaction. It distances you from people who truly care. It makes you doubt even the good things, because once the most beautiful thing ended in betrayal. And so, you begin to believe, no one is genuine. No one truly understands me. Love is exhausting. The more you hope, the more you hurt. But have you ever stopped to ask, is that really the truth? Or is it just your pain speaking for you? You no longer expect much. Not because you've reached enlightenment, but because you no longer have the faith to expect anything. You no longer open up. Not because you're cold, but because every time you did, you had to patch yourself up afterward, alone. You no longer cry, not because you've stopped hurting, but because your tears dried up long ago, from all the nights you had to wipe them away in silence. You've been walking too far, without ever pausing to ask, what am I carrying that's making me this tired? Maybe you're carrying a memory that was never explained, a question that was never answered, a version of yourself buried so deeply no one even noticed. Carl Jung called that the shadow. Everything you reject, suppress, deny, becomes the shadow that drives you from within. You don't need someone to save you. You just need one moment of truth, real enough to see yourself again. You've run too far, held too tight, pretended too well. But maybe now, you're just tired. Tired because no one has truly touched the part of you that's longing for a hug. Not from someone else, but from yourself, for the child inside you, who's been forgotten for too long. You don't need to be fine anymore. You just need to be real. And the truth is, no pain comes to destroy you. It comes to remind you that you are still alive. You still have the capacity to feel, and if you're brave enough not to kill the pain, it will lead you back to yourself, authentic, gentle, and whole. Her name was Claire. Everyone thought Claire was a strong woman, independent, calm, with a good job, and always in control of her emotions. But few knew Claire was the kind of person who always bounced back right after every hardship. No complaints, no whining, no tears. She lost her father at 13. Her mother fell into depression and was barely present. She grew up in silent rooms where every emotion had to be buried because no one had the strength to hear one more complaint. Claire became a mature child early on. She learned to take care of herself, learned to set her pain aside and do what was expected so well, in fact, that people would say, "This girl is really strong." And Claire believed it. She believed the fewer the emotions, the stronger you are, the deeper you bury sadness, the more mature you seem. At 22, she graduated with honors. At 25, she became a marketing manager. She lived a very rational life, clear plans, defined goals, always punctual, always in control. No one ever saw her cry. No one ever saw her lose her temper. Until Claire met a man named Mark. Mark was different. He was deep, emotional, sometimes a little unpredictable, but he was patient, and he truly wanted to understand her. At first, Claire felt safe. For the first time, someone didn't expect her to be fine all the time. He accepted her silences, her self-doubt. But over time, Claire started feeling uneasy. She didn't know why. Every time Mark asked, "What are you thinking about? Are you feeling sad? Do you need space?" she felt choked, like something sacred was being invaded. So she began to push Mark away, not with anger, but with silence, with avoidance, with polite smiles, as if nothing was wrong. Then one day, Mark said, "I feel like there's always a distance between us. I don't want to push if you're not ready. But if you never show me your real self, can we even call this love?" Claire didn't respond. She wasn't mad. She just went quiet. A few weeks later, she initiated the breakup. The reason? "I don't think we're compatible. I'm not ready for something this deep." Mark accepted it because he knew what she was rejecting wasn't him. It was the wounded part inside her that had never been seen. After the breakup, Claire returned to her routines, work, projects, control. On the outside, she was still the strong woman. But each night, she began to feel drained. She wasn't tired because she missed someone. She was tired because every time someone got close, she had to brace herself, so they wouldn't see how much she'd been hurt. One night, after working late, she came home to silence. No message notifications, no one waiting, no one asking, "Are you okay?" She opened her phone and read through her old messages with Mark, and for the first time in years, she cried, not because she missed him, but because she missed herself, the version of her that longed to be seen, to be understood, to be touched, but was buried under a shell called strength. Claire realized something. No one had made her lonely. She had isolated herself, so no one could see the part that was still in pain. Since losing her father, she had never allowed herself to truly grieve. She didn't cry, didn't speak, didn't ask, "Why me?" She just kept going, like a soldier with no right to fall. And now, at 32, amidst all her achievements and praise, she felt like a lost child inside an adult's body. That was the moment she understood. Pain doesn't disappear. It changes form. It becomes shadow if you don't listen to it. Claire didn't need some advanced therapy. She just needed one quiet evening, all the lights off, doing nothing, and saying to herself, "I'm hurting, and I allow myself to hurt, not to complain, not to blame, but to reconnect with the self she once abandoned. And from that moment on, the real journey began. Not a journey of healing, but a journey of returning. No, pain doesn't just go away. It simply waits for the moment you're most vulnerable to return. No, you're not fine like you think. You've just gotten used to disconnecting from your true emotions. No, time doesn't heal all wounds. It only hardens the scar if you don't dare to look directly at it. Carl Jung once said, "What you resist persists. What you avoid stays." The pain you deny will always find a way back, wearing a different face. It may show up in someone who hurts you in the same old pattern. It may explode in an overreaction to something seemingly trivial. It may spill into tears over something small, not because it's that sad, but because it touches an unhealed wound. You think you're living consciously, but truth is, you're running on survival mode, a kind of emotional automation designed to avoid facing the real pain. And the irony is, the smarter you are, the better you are at fooling yourself. The more rational you are, the more you explain things away to avoid feeling. You call it maturity, you call it logic, but what you're really doing is dressing up your pain in a suit and letting it run your life from the inside out. Be honest. How many times have you done the opposite of what your heart wanted, just to keep a relationship from cracking? How many times have you stayed silent, not out of forgiveness, but because you were too tired to argue? How many times have you said yes, while screaming no inside? All of that is a sign of a fragmented self, a self that once hurt, but never got understood. And now it manipulates you by making you choose safety over truth. Stoicism doesn't tell you to suppress emotions. It doesn't say, be numb to be strong. It says something deeper. Awareness is not about feeling less, but feeling without being consumed. You can be sad and still not collapse. You can hurt and not turn bitter. You can miss someone without going back to a place that once made you lose yourself. But to get there, you must go through the pain, not around it. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. If you're hurting because of something outside, that pain isn't from the event, but from the meaning you've attached to it. So ask yourself, what meaning have you attached to your pain? Did you label it as failure? Do you see it as a sign of weakness? Do you believe you're too sensitive, and that's why you got hurt? No, you're not too sensitive. You're just real, in a world too fake. And no, you didn't fail. You just once believed in something so beautiful. There was no room for betrayal. You don't have to change your past. You only need to change how you see yourself. In that past moment, when Claire chose to leave Mark, she wasn't wrong. She just didn't understand herself well enough to stay. She didn't walk away from love. She ran from the unprocessed pain within her. And so do you. You don't need to blame yourself for all the times you loved wrong, chose wrong, endured too long. Because back then, you were simply trying to survive. And the way you chose was the way you thought would protect that fragile part of you. Forgive yourself, but don't excuse it away. You don't need to kill the pain to move on. You just need to understand it, so it no longer owns you. What does understanding mean? It means daring to look at the story behind your actions. It means facing the raw emotion before logic kicks in. It means sitting with your pain, not to analyze, but to truly feel it. Stoicism isn't just surface-level strength, it's inner mastery. And mastery doesn't come from hiding. It comes from seeing clearly, not running, and still standing. You might say, I don't have time to feel this pain. But the truth is, if you don't make time to understand your pain, you'll spend your whole life living in its consequences. No, pain isn't controlling you. You've just never stepped into the center of it, to see its real face. No, you don't need others to understand you. You just need to stop hoping for that, from people who've never understood themselves. No, you don't need a second chance to begin again. You only need to admit, I was in pain, and I abandoned myself. And from there, everything can begin again. For the first time, from within. You don't need to kill the pain. You just need to listen to it long enough to understand why it's there. You don't need to force yourself to be okay. You just need to stop pretending so you can finally breathe for real. You don't need to keep running because the place you're hiding from is the most honest part of you. You were never wrong for being in pain. You're only wrong if you let that pain silence you, suffocate you, and separate you from yourself. You're not weak for having cried. You're only weak if you forced yourself to smile when your soul was falling apart. No, you don't need to stay positive all the time. Positivity is a state, not an obligation. No, you don't have to be strong every moment. Strength is when you can say, I'm not okay, and I'm done hiding. No, you don't need to be understood by others. You just need the courage to understand yourself when no one else does. The more you try to kill the pain, the more it comes back, sharper, stronger, and deeper. Because pain never disappears. It just changes form, becomes the shadow, and manipulates you from within. You think you choose who to love, but often it's your unhealed pain that chooses for you. It makes you repeat a certain type of person, a certain type of hurt, a certain type of ending. You think you're living with self-control, but really, you're living through survival instincts, programmed since childhood. Where you were taught that emotions mean weakness, you think you've moved on, but actually, you've just buried everything deep enough so no one can see it. Not even you. But you know, no matter how well you suppress, no matter how bright your smile is, there's still an empty space in your chest that speaks loudest in your quietest nights. You know it, and you've been living with it for too long. Carl Jung once said, loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you. Loneliness doesn't come from the absence of people. It comes from the inability to speak the truths that matter most to you. And you've lived in that loneliness, not because no one listened, but because you got used to not speaking. You talk about the weather, work, plans, routines, but you've never said the one thing that matters. I was once abandoned. I was never chosen. I once believed that if I changed myself, they would stay. You've been silent for too long, and the pain had no choice but to become part of your personality. It shows up in how you avoid intimacy, in the caution every time someone gets close, in the way you leave first, just to avoid being left again. But healing doesn't come from controlling every possible pain. Healing comes from understanding. Pain is not the enemy. It's the way back to your true self. When you understand the pain, you're no longer its victim. When you understand the past, it no longer defines your future. When you understand yourself, you no longer need to pretend to be okay, just to be accepted. Don't repeat the same story and call it destiny. Don't protect your pain by denying your truth, and don't sacrifice your true self just to keep a version that's easier to love. Who you once were matters less than this question. Do you have the courage to return and embrace the part of you that was once buried? You can't heal if you still hate yourself for being fragile. You can't grow if you're still ashamed for once needing someone. Tell the part of you that once hurt, I see you now, and this time, I'm not leaving. No one can do this for you. No philosophy can substitute this confrontation. You must do it yourself. And that is real strength. No, you don't need to keep holding it together. You just need to sit down and let the pain finish its unfinished story. Because sometimes, just one moment of honesty with yourself is enough to begin again, without wearing a single mask. You've been silent long enough, not because you had nothing to say, but because you once believed, even if you said it, no one would understand, no one would stay. But today, if you're still here, listening to these very last minutes, then maybe it's time you no longer need anyone else to understand. You just need yourself to never abandon you again. You don't have to begin with something big. Just sit down, place your hand over your chest, and ask, what am I really feeling right now? Maybe there won't be an answer right away. Maybe the pain will resist, will tremble, will try to escape. But don't rush to soothe it, and don't force it to calm down. Let it speak, as if it's the first time it's allowed to live honestly. Let it talk, without being interrupted by any reasonable excuse. Because you don't need to prove anything anymore. You don't need to be okay just so someone will care. You don't need to be strong just so someone will stay. You just need to be real, so you don't lose yourself again. The pain will still be there, but it will soften. When you stop silencing it, it will stop eating you alive. When you stop hating it, it will become the doorway back to your truest self. If you dare walk through, we cannot erase the past, but we can stop letting it speak for us in the present. You can't change the fact that you were once abandoned, but you can choose not to abandon yourself ever again. Starting today, you can't go back in time to tell your inner child everything will be okay, but you can go back and listen to what that child never got the chance to fully say. Maybe not everything I said today made sense to you, but if even one sentence stayed with you, keep it. Not to believe in me, but to start believing in yourself again. You don't need to rush to heal. You don't need to force positivity. You just need the courage to be real, even just once. Even if it's just a few minutes a day. Even if it's just one deep breath, without defense. That's the moment when the pain loses its grip, because you've chosen not to run and not to surrender, but simply to stay with all the unfinished stories inside you. And if something inside you just stirred, if a quiet corner was just touched, then I hope you won't rush back into your old rhythm. Give yourself one truly quiet night. Turn off the screen, turn off the noise, and let silence lead you back to yourself. Silence, not to endure anymore, but to understand. Understand what once disconnected you. Understand what still feels missing, even when you have so much. Understand what made you stop feeling like yourself. And if there's one last thing I want you to remember, you don't need to kill the pain to live. You just need to understand it, so you no longer live unconsciously. If you've ever felt too sensitive, too deep, too different for anyone to understand, then watch the next video. They didn't reject you, they feared you.